Operation Sea Lion, probably one of the most daring plans in German history. It deals with the invasion of Great Britain. While at the beginning of the Second World War, the Germans still shield away from a confrontation with the mighty British Empire, this changed abruptly with the rapid defeat of France. The war in the West was to end with a complete victory over Great Britain, even before the planned campaign against the Soviet Union was to start. The top secret invasion plans were only uncovered in secret files after the war and contain some explosive details. We look at this crazy plan in detail today. How were the British to be defeated and why did the planned invasion ultimately fail after all? Germany's plans for the war in the West included mainly France from the beginning. Germany wanted to bring down the hereditary enemy after the bitter fights in the First World War. In addition, the British were to be forced into a quick negotiated peace. The idea was that Britain could give up and give Nazi Germany a free hand in Europe in order to preserve its own empire. But the British under their Prime Minister Churchill made it clear from the start which side they were on. They declared war on Germany after the invasion of Poland and remained unimpressed even after the conquest of France. Thus, in August 13, 1940, the Germans began the so-called Battle of Britain in the air, which was to serve as preparation for the invasion of the British Isles. The German leadership still hoped that by succeeding in the air war and demoralizing the British population, they would be able to force Great Britain into a compromise peace. However, if that did not work, the English Channel was to be crossed and a conquest of the islands was to take place. But what was the plan in detail? As stated, the first priority was to eliminate the Royal Air Force and gain supremacy in the air. Then, the German Navy was to gain sovereignty over the English Channel, which would allow the troops to reach the southern tip of Britain. For this purpose, a massive army was gathering in the northwestern European ports, which would eventually carry out the invasion and land in Britain. Also, a mock landing in the north of Great Britain was to be carried out in parallel in order to tie up British troops there. On the actual landing in the south, the first wave would comprise about 90,000 men, and by the third day, a total of 260,000 men would have crossed the English Channel and brought a wide coastal strip under German control. And from there, the soldiers would advance northward until the British government agreed to surrender. While Walter von Brauchitsch, then commander-in-chief of the army, was very convinced of the plan and expected victory after only 1 month, both the German naval staff and the commander-in-chief of the Luftwaffe, Hermann Göring, were less euphoric. The Royal Navy in particular was vastly superior to the German Navy, which had suffered heavy losses in the conquest of Norway shortly before. And the German air attacks did not have the desired effect either. Thus, the planned date for the landing was repeatedly postponed, and a period of bad weather in late autumn 1940 made a crossing of the English Channel even more hopeless. And Hitler was also becoming increasingly impatient and preferred to carry out his planned invasion of the Soviet Union. So by the spring of 1941, at the latest, it became clear that the operation would be called off and all troops would be regrouped for Operation Barbarossa, the attack of the Soviet Union. In hindsight, we can also say that such an invasion was doomed to failure from the very beginning. The last time that Great Britain could be conquered from the European mainland was in 1066 by the Normans. And the German Empire, which overran its previous opponents, would most likely have failed in such an endeavor. The British government and military had been preparing for such an invasion since the beginning of the war. Thus, a network of coastal defenses, including minefields and fortifications, was created to halt the German advance. The British Navy, along with the US Navy, was considered the most powerful in the world, and it was far superior to the German Navy not only in numbers but also in quality. The Germans also lacked the landing craft needed for such an operation, and in other places the German logistics were not prepared for such an attack. And besides, air supremacy over Great Britain could never be achieved. And so the air battle of England and the associated rejection of Operation Sea Lion is considered Hitler's first defeat in World War II. So that was it with the video. If you enjoyed this video, I also recommend you my last video where I talked about why Switzerland couldn't be invaded in World War II. See you in this video and I say bye.